Carol.
Yes.
Anything in the green today? It's going to be a record high.
Yeah, a little bit in the green,
Did
right?
you know that coming into this or no?
You know, this is why I count on you, Romaine. We'd be lost without you. We are lost when you're not here.
I love when you patronize me.
I know. Yeah, listen, we did see equities move up a little bit following those Fed minutes. Yeah, it looks like we're going to finish still off the highs of the session, but as you're saying, it could be a record here on the S&P.
Hey, not a record for Bitcoin. Kind of staying within a tight range, sub $100,000 right now, 96,000 at last check. Big question, what's the next catalyst to move in one direction?
Also not a good day for home builders. You have all 18 members of the builders and S&P indexes in the red. Toll Brothers did not give anyone any reason to bid these names higher. Housing starts was also disappointing, too.
And keep an eye on defense stocks. It was kind of interesting to see some news reports here about a potential cut in the Pentagon budget. At least that would be the wish of the president of the United States. That sent a lot of those shares down, including Northrop Grumman down a couple of percent, and then Palantir taking a big leg down about 11 or 12%, despite the fact that it's, of course, one of the better performers that we've had in the stock market for the last few months.
Yeah, it's a good reminder, right, that, you know, even though you look at the major averages and they're up a little bit, there are a bunch of names down in today's session as well.
We are expecting several earnings here in the after hours, including from Cheesecake Factory, NerdWallet, Toast, and Carvana, as we get the closing bells in New York, as well as Klaviyo as well, which is ringing the closing bell there on the NYSE. They're scheduled to report earnings a little bit later this afternoon as well. Green across the screen, and at least for two of those indices, that's good enough for a record high. The S&P 500 right around 6,144 as we wait for these numbers to settle. That's higher by about 15 points or 0.2%. The NASDAQ up fractionally on the day. The NASDAQ 100 at a record high. The Dow Jones Industrial Average also up fractionally by 0.1% or 0.2%. We'll call it up 71 points. The Russell 2000, though, as well as the S&P 400 mid caps, as well as Dow Transports, all sitting this one out. The Russell down 0.3% on the day.
All right, so some pressure certainly on that group. Back to the big caps, the S&P 500. You got 296 names to the upside, Scarlet, 206 to the downside.
All right, and let's look at the IMAP. The 11 sectors in the S&P 500. Definitely a lot of green there. You have healthcare leading the way, up 1.25%. Staples and energy stocks also gaining about 0.7%. Two sectors in the red, led down by materials, chemical company, Celanese, the big drag there, and financials basically unchanged.
All right, let's get to some of the individual gainers as we await some earnings here after the close. Garmin up 12.6%, number one gainer in the S&P 500, rallying to an all-time high today. The company maker of GPS-enabled devices, you know who they are, reported fourth quarter results that beat expectations. They also gave an outlook that is ahead of the analyst consensus. So we've seen quite a move up actually in the stock overall, but a lot of it because of today, up about 17% year to date. Analog devices, again, an outperformer in both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100, reported this morning adjusted earnings per share for the first quarter that beat the average analyst estimate. Remember, last night after the close, the company had boosted its buyback by $10 billion and increased its dividend by 8%. So some outperformance in analog devices. And then one more for you, a microcap. Yes, it's called Serve Robotics. It's up about 13% in today's session. About 11% of the float is shorted. Just going to put that out. But yet some outperformance rallying. It's an autonomous delivery company, and it came out, says it's expanding its services to the Miami metro area with Shake Shack and Uber Eats. So some outperformance.
If I recall correctly, last week it was a big decliner because we learned that NVIDIA, via its 13F, that was one of the companies that they got out of.
Ah, good to know.
I've seen those little robots around LA, by the way.
Have you?
Hey, do you want to talk about some decliners, starting with shares of Intel? Was a big gainer yesterday, up 16%. This all on speculation that the company would be broken up in a deal involving TSMC and Broadcom. And in fact, last week was its best year, going all the way back to the year 2000, giving back some of those gains today, falling by about 6%, still up 35% just from February 11th. And shares of Bumble just taking a tumble today, down 30% in the session. The company gave a first quarter forecast that was weaker than expected on key metrics. First quarter revenue came in below estimates. First quarter app revenue, that's seen as below estimates. First quarter adjusted EBITDA, all of this guidance came in weaker than expected. We saw price targets cut at Stifel and Evercore ISI. And finally, Nikola finished the day down by 39%. It was once a darling of the EV industry. The company filed for bankruptcy. It's exploring a sale of its assets after entering Chapter 11 in Delaware. The company listed total funded debt and lease obligations of $98 million. They've got $47 million in cash on hand. You remember Bloomberg News reporting a few years ago that Trevor Milton, the founder, had overstated the capability of Nikola's debut truck. Those allegations, coupled with subsequent short seller campaigns that led to Milton's ouster and later conviction on fraud charges.
All right, let's take a quick look at yields. Kind of a mild day in the Treasury space here. Yields were down pretty much across the board, but only really we're talking about a basis point or so. Keep an eye on that 20-year yield. We did have an auction earlier here in the day, and that day actually did tail heading into that auction for a third straight time here, suggesting that investors are starting to demand a little bit of extra yield here in terms of buying into those new issues coming out of the Treasury Department.
And of course, the big story of the day, at least if you live in the New York area or commute into the city, is the fact that the Trump administration has moved to block the city's congestion pricing program. We're, of course, waiting to hear from Kathy Hochul, the New York State governor, on how New York State will respond, although, you know, they have sued to stop this move by the Trump administration, so the MTA at least. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But
Carol, you were against this, right?
No, I think it's a
Carol's
good
not allowed
thing.
to be for it or against it.
like
Don't you know
that.
how it works here?
Wow. No, but you know
Are you
what?
just saying that because she's from New Jersey?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
I thought
No.
everyone in New Jersey hated that.
No, but I was going to warn you guys, don't mention it because Tim's head might explode. But having said that, it really, to me, opens up this whole idea of, do states have any control over what they are doing within their states? And I am curious to see how legally this ultimately will play out.
I went down that rabbit hole, too, because I couldn't understand why the president would have say over this. But it gets to this idea. Apparently, there is a law in the books. It basically says if you build money and you use you build a road and you use federal money to do so, that means you can't put a toll on that road unless the federal government gives you an exemption.
Huh. All right. Devil's always in the details. Yeah. Man, I love
so
when
you learn
do
something new.
I love when you do the deep dives. All right, let's get to NerdWallet. Some earnings crossing the Bloomberg terminal. Fourth quarter revenue, it's a big beat, $183.8 million. The street was looking for $168.7 million. Fourth quarter adjusted EBITDA, $30.8 million. That, too, above the estimate of $22.9 million among analysts. Fourth quarter EPS, earnings per share, 51 cents versus a loss of 3 cents a share. That's year over year. And I'm just looking at NerdWallet. It is up, as you can see, almost 4% here in the aftermarket.
All right, I'm going to take a look at Klaviyo. This is a company that does kind of like text messaging and sort of email stuff for businesses to better target folks. They're out with their earnings, and the shares are higher in the after-hours trade. This after fourth quarter results on a revenue basis jumped 34% in the most recent quarter, $270 million. That's above what the street was looking for. Operating income was down, though it was still higher than what the street was looking for. So a drop in operating income, but not as bad as some folks had thought. And the company gave a forecast for the full year saying that revenue will be $1.16 billion roughly. That's slightly higher than street estimates.